Bending notes. Now, it goes without saying that bending notes is an important part of guitar soloing. Having the ability to get that note to pitch every single time you bend it is crucial. A badly bent note is every bit as off-putting and painful to listen to as a wrong note. Bending notes is a key way to add expression and kind of a lyrical quality to your playing. In other words, kind of making your solos sing. What we often refer to as feel, I suppose. Now, I've said this before, but it bears repeating as far as how note bending relates to feel. Sometimes it's a conscious effort, a conscious injection of feel. The ability to know which notes to bend, where to bend them, how much to bend them, and also when to bend them to achieve maximum expression in your playing. And on the other hand, there's the literal aspect of bending notes as it relates to feel. One is literally feeling that string ride up the fretboard until it reaches its desired destination. So that's very much a literal feel. It's not always as simple as using the audible cues that you're getting while you're soloing. Sometimes a bent note happens so fast or impulsively, if one is improvising, that there simply isn't time to listen to that note getting to the right spot. You need to feel it get there and get there every damn time on pitch. And that comes with repetition and lots and lots and lots of practice. And now, there are styles of play that require fewer bent notes than others. Shredding, for instance, and maybe some country picking. And there's nothing wrong with that. Shredding doesn't call for a ton of bent notes. It's all about speed and precision and scale runs and whatnot, and arpeggios. In shredding and like country picking, you may start with a bent note and rip off some scale runs and throw in another bent note and maybe a few more scale runs and then finish up with a bent note or two. That's part of the reason why a lot of people say that shredders don't play with a whole lot of feel. They associate feel and expression with a lot of bent notes because, like I already said, bending notes is very much a feel aspect of guitar soloing. It's how one adds that lyrical quality to your soloing. Of course, there are exceptions and other ways to instill feel in your playing if speed is your thing, like it is mine. You could slide in and out of notes, legato work, whammy bar work, vibrato. Steve Vai, for example, is a master of this, a shredder who manages to instill a ton of feel into his playing while still playing very, very fast. But then you have your players like David Gilmour, Gary Moore, Eric Clapton, and the like, blues-based players who don't play particularly fast, well, except Gary Moore, but bend nearly as many notes as they don't bend. It's an integral part of their style and thus are considered players with an incredible amount of feel. And if you're here watching this right now, I'm going to guess that may be something you're looking for in your own playing. We're going to be working within two scales for this tutorial little talk. First, the E minor pentatonic scale, and then we'll add a few more notes and work within the E natural minor scale. Also because it's my favorite scale. It's kind of my home scale. I also think the the natural minor scale is a very important scale to know because it's used in a lot of rock and metal music, and it also has the added bonus of having the minor pentatonic built right into it, should one prefer to solo strictly in the pentatonic for rock or metal, or for more traditionally blues-based type of stuff. Now, we're going to be working mostly for this kind of little tutorial talk in the E minor pentatonic, and then we're going to switch up into the E natural minor scale. And the difference between the two, we're working in this position up here at the 12th fret. Your E minor pentatonic in this position that's 12-15, 12-14, 12-14, 12-14, 12-15, 12-15. Now the E natural minor scale, you're adding two notes to that, making it a diatonic or 7-note scale. That's 12, 14, 15, 12, 14, 15, 12, 14, 11, 12, 14, 12, 13, 15, 12, 14, 15. So we're going to start off in the E minor pentatonic, and we're going to start bending some notes. So you may be wondering, well, so we're in the E minor pentatonic. In that little box right there. You may wonder which notes of those can you bend? Well, you can bend all of them. Every single one of them. There are key notes within the pentatonic box that work better than others. And so if we're in this little box right here, these three at 14, 15, and 15, those are really good bending notes. That's a good vibrato note. That's the root note. So those three are key, but you can bend every single note. Well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I was teaching a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago a few things, and he's a beginner guitar player, and I was trying to teach him a few things, a little bit of Jimmy Page, and he couldn't really bend notes very well. And so I think I should backtrack a little bit into how to bend a note. When you're bending a note, you're really not, you know, a lot of people, okay, so when you're bending a note, it's almost always your ring finger, and then you're backing it up with your middle finger behind it to give it a little bit more strength. So we're at the 14th fret here, and we're going to bend that up a full step. And get it to pitch every time. Just keep practicing that, getting that bent note to pitch, but using basically the finger behind your bending finger as support for extra strength. Now, I like to bend a lot with my index finger, and that takes hand strength, and you're pretty well limited to a full step bend or a half step bend. It's really hard to bend a step and a half with an index finger, but that's a full step bend at the 12th fret with your index finger. But to get that up a step and a half, it's tough. So don't try step and a half bends with your index finger. But so there's three basic bends. There's your half step bend, just up to the next note. There's a full step bend, and then there's a step and a half bend. And that's basically taking that note, half step bend is bringing it up to that, full step bend is bringing it up to that, and a step and a half bend is bringing it up to that note. And now you can do two-step bends. Not as common, but half-step bends, lots of half-step bends, lots of full-step bends, and lots of step and a half bends. So, and when you're bending a note, you're really not bending it with your fingers. You're bending it with kind of like your wrist and your arm, and just letting your fingers go along for the ride. So you want to use your fingers when you get up into that bend, maybe to add a little vibrato, you use your fingers, but you're basically using your arm and your wrist to get that note up. Not really your fingers. And so now I'm going to get back to what I was talking about and which notes you can bend. And like I said, if you're in the pentatonic, those three are key. If you're in E, the 14th fret on the G string, the 15th fret on the B string, and the 15th fret on the E string, those are key bending notes. But you can bend every single note in the scale as long as you know how far to bend it. Because you're just going to be bending it to another note in the scale. Every one of those bends that I just did, I'm bending them to another note within the scale. So if you take other notes within the scale that are not those three key bending notes, as long as you know how far to bend them to another note in the scale, they will work. So take this note at the 12th fret. If I'm going to bend that, the next note in the pentatonic scale is the 15th fret. That note right there. So if I'm going to bend that note, the 12th fret on the B string, that's got to go up a step and a half to get to that note. And that's a lovely expressive bend when you're using it soloing in the pentatonic. Or for instance, the 12th fret going up to 15. You can bend that note, but it has to be a step and a half to get to that note. And then this note. Well, that's the one we just did. This note here, the next one up from the pentatonic, the next one, which is basically that note, which I said is one of the key bending notes at the 14th fret of the G string. The octave of that one is the exact same thing, one of the key notes in for bending in the E minor pentatonic at the 17th fret. And now we're into the three main key bending notes. So you see what I mean? Every note within the pentatonic scale can be bent. You just need to know how far to bend it. Now, when we move into the E minor pentatonic, that's adding notes, and that's adding half-step bends. And that's another reason why I think the E minor pentatonic is very important, because then you can get into doing half-step bends. And David Gilmour does this a lot. You know, you're working in something like this. Okay, first of all, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit into the E natural minor box. And we're going to pretty much ignore the top three strings because those are not really, you don't do a whole lot of bending up there. But the bottom three strings, and that's 15, 14, 15, 14, 15, 14, 12, 15, 13, 12, and then 14, 12, 11. That little wheelhouse right there. And that gives us a lot of opportunity for doing half-step bends. So, and then we're also using, you know, the pentatonic is built right into that. So we're bending, you know, you still have your three main key bending notes within that box, those three, at the 15th, 15th, 14th. But now you've got half steps that you can get in there. At the 14th fret of the E string, you can give that a nice little half step bend if you're in the natural minor box. Lots of little half step bends in there. And like I said, every single note within the scale can be bent as long as you're bending it up to another note within the scale. Now, see, I'm trying to get the step and a half bend there, but it's not working. So those are some ideas to play with as far as bending notes go. So, but it takes a lot of practice. You got to get the note to pitch. It's very, very important. If you're not getting the note to pitch, you're playing a wrong note, basically. and you don't want to play wrong notes, and no one wants to listen to wrong notes. But so anyway, those are some ideas to play with that whatever scale you're using, you can bend any note within that scale as long as you're bending it to pitch and to another note in the scale. And remember, bend with your arm and your wrist. And then when you're bending notes and you get better at it, then you can start doing things like adding vibrato to the top of those bends. And then you can do pre-bends. Get that note up there before picking it, and then release it. But so a few key takeaways that I want you to get from this is bend with your wrist and your arm, and do a lot of practicing of getting that note to pitch every single time. And knowing where the notes of your scale are, and knowing the three main key bending notes, and then working around those within the scale, and trying other notes within the scale. Sometimes when you're working in the E natural minor scale, the notes don't really work with what you're playing behind. So fall back on the pentatonic, because that works in almost everything. But so anyway, those are some ideas to play with, and I hope this was helpful to you. And just something a little tutorial I wanted to do, and because I'm working on some David Gilmour right now, and there's a lot of note bending going on. It's kind of, I think we're. You know that one from time. So anyway, I've been working on that, and I'm thinking, God, there's a lot of bent notes in that. I'm going to do a quick tutorial about bending notes. So anyway, I hope this helped you out, and practice your bent notes. They're very important. All right, we'll see you next time. Ciao.